In the front.
The waiting stand.
Although the Tyler can't see what it's doing.
First thing.
He's gonna take a time.
Yeah.
Would it be better to use Tyler? Would it be better to use white shirt or it's only two I have?
I use the white.
Okay.
Then you got all of Sharpie later, some white showing.
Okay.
All right, Tyler, it is all yours. Can't you should be able to get this on YouTube? Can't you should be able to get this on YouTube as well right now?
Who's in waiting?
I'll check in a second. Is that light to you or?
Probably shoot now.
As long as you can see.
Yeah. It's time late at night in the dark. All right. Good to get started?
Good to get started.
Everybody know who this is? It's Tyler Wood. He's the captain down at Fort Polk. They got a long drive back, so.
All right, so tonight we're going to be tying the Peanut Envy. It's a Kelly Gallup fly. So like its name suggests, it came from another fly. So Russ Madden was working at Kelly Gallup's fly shop back when they were in Michigan. Russ Madden was a guide for Kelly Gallup, and he created an articulated fly called the Circus Peanut. And it was an extremely versatile fly. It was tied a little differently. It had lead eyes instead of a cone head, and it had like a polar chenille for its body, and worked extremely well. Caught a lot of fish. Kelly Gallup liked it, wanted to create his own version of it, and that's how we get the Peanut Envy. So essentially, the Peanut Envy, it's an articulated fly. This is the miniature version, so it's going to be tied on a size 4 trailer hook and a size 2 in the front. So essentially, it's broken down into, you got your tail, which is a marabou. You got some flash for the lateral line. It looks very similar to a woolly bugger for both the rear and front hooks, but then it has a cone head, and you'll see that it has some crazy legs throughout. So you can do all different types of color combinations. I used it in Colorado a lot with a lot of success. Works well here in Louisiana for fishing for bass. It uses a bass or a brass head. I recommend not using a tungsten cone head. This one I did in olive and black. You can do them all white as well. You can mix up the hackle and the marabou, and then for the body you can do different color dubbing to kind of make it stand out and be more of an attractor fly. But the color combinations are endless, so I recommend having fun and playing with it. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm tying this fly. So you should in front of you have 3 pieces of marabou. You should have 2 saddle hackles. You can use saddle hackler. You can use schlappen. You should have some type of polar flash or flashabou for its tail. We're going to use crystal flash and chenille polar flash for its body. For the articulation, we got some 3D beads, and there's also a brass cone head. For fly hooks, we're going to use 2461s from Daiichi and a size 2 and 4 for the rear and front hooks. And thread, I use Danville 140 denier, but you can use GSP or any type of thread that you want to use for this pattern. All right, so we'll start by just putting the size 4 hook in your vise.
So you start with the 4.
Yep, size 4 for the rear hook.
Message over there. Right. Send a message.
All right, so once you get your hook in your vise, we're just going to do a thread wrap back to the barb in the hook. So the way I like to do it, I like to put a good base of thread down because that's where the marabou tail is going to go. So I'll start with the thread just about in the middle. I'll hold this tag end of the thread and I'll put a little tension on it and I'll wrap back towards the hook. And by doing that, wrapping up against that thread, it'll put a good base all the way back. And it won't have any gaps in the thread. Just cut the tag end off. All right, so next we're going to do the tail. So the tail, if you're going to err on the side of caution, go long. All right, so it's better to have the tail a little long than too short. All right, so I recommend a good piece of marabou that's got a little bit of length to it. If you got some water like Mike does in front of him, you can wet it. I usually just will wet it, and it makes it easier to kind of see the length and how it's going to lay down, and makes it easier to tie in.
Just one plume?
Just one plume. It's going to be that first one.
Talking about hook length.
Yeah, it's just about hook length, maybe a little bit shorter. All right, and so when I tie this in, the tail, I do exaggerated cross reps forward and exaggerated cross reps back. So I don't just go thread over thread. And so the cross wraps, and it'll be critically important when we do the articulation wire. But essentially, you ever seen like those finger traps? That's what we're going to be creating, and that's going to lock in that piece of marabou.
Putting it right on top, Todd?
Right on top, yep. So that's the cross wraps forward. What I'll do is I'll twist this piece of marabou, and this gets it all tight, so when I go to cut it off, there's no excess. And then we'll go ahead and do the cross wraps back. All right, so that's the tail.
Is this one plume?
Yep, one plume.
You gonna put two?
Nope, so we'll just do one plume for the tail.
You cut it up near the eye, is that right?
Yeah, just about maybe like a little centimeter short of the eye. You don't want to rush the eye of this hook too fast or with too much material, because you'll see that's where we're going to tie in the silly legs. We're going to tie in that second plume of marabou. So if you run the materials too close to the eye, you risk of having a bulky tie off.
Should that cut it?
This is.
They say these catch bigger fish though, so I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, and where you want to end up at is just about the barb. Your thread lines up with the hook barb, you're in the right spot.
Oh, no, it's a ball.
No, I'm all right. Time in the dark issues. You okay? You want now? Where's that? Or is this? Yeah. So right rather than bar.
All right, everyone got the tail tied in. So now we're gonna add the lateral line for that flash. I don't like to put too much flash in this fly, but I'll put 2 or 3 strands into the tail. So to tie these in, I'll start on the side of the fly across from me. So it's parallel with the hook, and I'll do 2 wraps, and that locks it in.
Where'd you start? I was.
Just where you ended the tail.
Yep.
Right here. On this side of the hook facing the camera,
Yep.
I'll put the flashaboo parallel with the hook, and I'll do 2 wraps tied in.
Okay.
All right, then once you get those 2 wraps and it's tied in, you just take this flashaboo back to the other side, parallel with the hook and the tail. 2 wraps.
Wait, I missed that, once you get it, I have 3 strands, once you get them tied in on one side,
Mhm.
what do you do?
So then you're gonna take the side closest to you, and you just bring them back across and put them in parallel on the opposite side, so it looks like this. I don't know if you can see that.
I tied mine in wrong. Wait, I went back out.
So when you tie it in, do you leave just a little bit or you leave it like about
So-
half?
So we'll cut it at the length of the tail. Once it's tied in on both sides, we'll just cut it off at the length of the tail.
But you only want a couple of strands of it.
Yeah, only about 2 to 3 strands.
Tie it in back at the base of the mirror.
Mhm, yep.
Okay, because I tied it in there first. So undo it? Okay. Can we take it off? No, you're good.
Take it right back.
I just made a loop.
More on this side.
Some on each side.
Yeah, ideally
Okay.
on someone's side.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just tie it in and it falls on top, it's totally fine. The fish ain't gonna care that much. All right, so once you get the flashaboo tied in, I just hold it back and I cut it at length of the marabou tail, just like that. All right, so the next piece of the fly is gonna be taking that piece of brass wire, and this is what's gonna be used to secure the hackle once we tie that in and wrap it back. So I don't like to just take a small piece of it and tie it in. What I'll do is kind of like a zigzag tie-in, but I'll hold it on the side closest to me, and I'll go about midway up the shank. And so the back end comes out towards the rear of the hook, and the front end about midway up the shank. All right. And I'll just wrap forward. Just wrap back.
You don't bend it back or anything like that to like it.
Yeah, we will. So that's what comes next. So once you tie it in, and it's just, you can do it on the top, you can do it on the side away from you, but I prefer on the side closest to me, because once I get the hackle tied in, it's easier for me to secure it if it's on my side. All right, and then so I'll bend it forward. And I'll do 3 to 4 wraps forward, securing it. And then I'll just bend it back towards the tail again. Wrapping it back. I don't know if you can see that in the camera. That's essentially, it's a zigzag tie-in. So when you're pulling this and putting tension on it, when you're wrapping it forward, securing the hackle, it's not gonna pull out of your wraps if you got some loose thread wraps.
What size wire is it?
That's a good question.
Present.
Yeah,
Thanks.
just ultra wire copper.
Tyler, do you take the,
This is apparently.
you take the wire and bend it back and forward?
Bend it forward. Yep.
Bend it forward, grab it.
Yep.
Back and forth.
Yep.
So you've got a Z.
Yeah, so when it's basically like a little Z on the side of the hook closest to you. And it's, when you end, you want the wire facing back towards the tail of the hook.
I'm trying to watch this thing, I'm watching it with my eyes open.
All right, so the next tie-in. So traditionally, this fly is tied with a dubbing loop and dubbing. So again, you can do that if you want to make it a little bit easier. We have crystal flash or any type of like chenille will work just fine. It's essentially going to be the same end state. So the crystal flash, it's got like a piece of thread underneath it. So when you, so that will be, it's coming up. So you just want to pull off a little bit at the front end, exposing some of that thread, and that's what you're going to tie in. So when I get to this point, and it's kind of where I cut off my marabou, because again, I don't want to rush the front part of the eye. I'll do a half hitch. Think of like a half hitch is you're pretty much like you're hitting save on a computer. And so that way, if you break your thread or cut your thread at any point, you know, your hackle and your tie-ins aren't coming undone. So I'll just do a half hitch. Secure it. You got a whip finish tool, same thing, just throw a whip finish in there. Just one time, one turn, and it'll secure it. For this part. So at the end of it, there should be just a little bit, just pull a little bit off. So it's like a centimeter of the rope exposed. And then you just tie that in closest to you. Yeah, just in front of the marabou tail.
Your thread's hanging back by far.
Yeah, so I ran my thread all the way up to this point, and I just did a half hitch, left it in here, and just to secure it when we advance the polar chenille forward.
Oh, I'm going backwards. Well, not backwards.
Oh, you ran your thread to the eye.
Yeah, just short of the eye and threw a half hitch in there.
Going all the way down.
No, just right here.
Just where it was before.
So here's the eye.
Oh,
Put it right
okay,
here.
okay, so you didn't go all the way down.
No.
So when do you tie the hackle?
So once we run the chenille forward, we'll tie the hackle in, run the hackle back, and then we'll take the wire and run the wire forward. And then we put the silly legs in, and then the marabou. And that's only half the fly.
Okay, so we're moving, put that. Okay.
What if I put blue instead of a hat? I don't know how to tie knots.
That looks perfect.
Okay.
I think I would go with that.
Doesn't have a knot.
Doesn't need a knot.
He
So-
gave me a tool.
How far back from the hook eye are you in hook diameters?
Okay.
I can't see it. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, everyone have their polar chenille tied in and their thread advanced forward? Okay. So if you got a rotary vise, you can turn it and bring your chenille forward, or you can do hand over hand. Either method's fine. But you want to do kind of tight wraps, but don't pull it too tight where the chenille is going to break. But you want to bring it back or bring it forward just to about where you did that half hitch.
I think my whole thing is backwards. I've got my tail pointing toward my eye.
Where's the picture?
I have my tail pointing toward my eye. It's all backwards.
Hey, she's done it at the house too.
Okay.
That's called a reverse time. It's an advanced technique.
I can do like that. That would work, look.
It would work.
So once you advance it forward,
That's what I'm gonna do.
just do three wraps, secure it tightly, and then you can just cut off the excess.
You would keep these wraps of chenille really close to each other?
Yes.
Those fish will think this is a battle.
Yeah, I may need another piece of chenille.
Yeah, I mean, you can do touch and wraps, and it'll be fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got more essays. Thanks. Iced up Chanel.
No, this was
That's
it's crystal flash is the only thing I could find that was, yeah. Basically the same.
Yeah.
That's actually probably better because when you do like a dubbing, it's not quite as thick as that. All right, so once you get that tied in, now you're gonna take your hackle feather. All right, but you wanna take off this, the fluffy piece, and just take all that off and just keep the stem, but just pull the fluff off.
They call them fluff.
Yep. If I give, you want to do a little, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but that's about how much stem.
Yep.
I'll leave. All right, so once you have the fluff taken off, take the stem just behind the eye, on the side closest to you. I'll do 3 wraps. Then I'll bend that stem back and I'll do 3 more wraps over it. And that's just so when you're holding it up and pulling it, and rotating it backwards, it's not going to come out. And the same thing, I'll just do another half hitch here.
Yeah.
For this, I just took the fluff off. Oh, so it's gonna be the hackle feather, not the marabou.
That's not.
He doesn't have it.
What you need?
I'm gonna get a
Is the concave side facing rear?
doing it where we have to bend it back? We do it that way and then bend it back that way?
Nope, so how it's pointed back like this is how I tie it in.
Okay.
I'll do 2 wraps and I'll just take just the stem and I'll bend it back over. And then I'll
Oh, I
do
got
2 or 3 times. So that way the stem's locked in and you're not gonna pull it out when you're wrapping it back.
So this, the beginning of the tackle tie-in should be about 2 eye lengths back.
Yeah, because that gives you room to tie in the silly legs and then also add the marabou plume.
Not to spill when it's all closed.
The Texas side's open, but it's very tight
I mean,
fishing.
you couldn't get downstream of the spillway.
No, yeah, I
Get
mean, you
downstream of the dam.
Yeah. can get to the bank access is pretty limited. So once it goes down, it'll be good fishing. All right, so once you have the hackle tied in, you got a half hitch securing it. So you take the hackle, I just pinch the top, or if you have like a little hackle pliers, you can use those too to help rotate it backwards. But you want to pull all the feathers down, kind of straighten them out. It's that way when you're wrapping the feather back, it just makes sure that all the hackles kind of lay flat like they're supposed to.
Yeah, I've got an extra set of tackle box. Well, no, not wrapping it. That's right.
All right, so once you got it, and then you're just gonna either go hand over hand or you just rotate back.
You're going in the same direction as where you're going?
Yep. I'll go once more around the hook. And then from here,
Are you going back toward the hook, you say?
yeah, you're going back towards the tail. You're wrapping it back. So kind of like very similar to a woolly bugger.
Hey.
Grab it from the bar.
Yep. All right, so once you get it back to the tail, or as close as you feel comfortable wrapping the hackle back to, you take that piece of copper wire and you're just gonna bring it over that tag end or the tip of the hackle. I go over it 2 or 3 times, pull it down tight, and then you can let go. That's locked in, that's not gonna go anywhere. You're gonna wanna cut that piece out. So I'll find it, my fingers. It's wrapped back.
You cut the tag end of the hackle.
Of the tip of the hackle, yep.
Counter wrapping back.
Yep. And so when you wrap the copper wire forward, you don't want to go slow. I find that if you wrap too slow, you're going to catch more hackle. It's not a big deal if you do catch some hackle, because then you could take some type of bodkin or a little pick like this, and you can kind of pick those hackles out. All you want to do is just run it forward. wrap it over 2 or 3 times and then just tie off that copper wire. So again, like you take a log tin or some type of pick. This one's actually didn't turn out too bad, but you can get in here and kind of pick out some of those hackles. You too.
Then once you get to there, you cut your wire.
Yep. All right, so once you have the wire cut, you can take out 2 of the silly legs. All right, so for the silly legs, on the side away from you, I just kind of drape them over the top.
The whole shebang on.
Yep,
2.
at the halfway point, 2 of them.
2 pack.
You want to just do 2 on the back end because then you'll do 3 on the front. So I'll do 2 wraps to secure it, and then I'll take the other 2 legs on the side closest to me, pull them back, do 2 more wraps. Now your legs are in.
You won't face them legs kind of.
Yeah, I mean they can kind of go back a little bit. They can drop straight down. It's not a big deal really how the legs lay.
I just need to bring them forward. Easy to hold.
All right, so then once you get the legs in, you can see maybe on your legs there's like a tag end or they're joined together. So I like the back legs to be just a little bit shorter than what the front legs are going to be tied in at. Just pick a length that you're comfortable with and just kind of cut the joined ends off so that they should hang like that.
How far did you pull back where you got it?
I maybe only cut like
4 inch?
yeah. All right, so the last part of this fly is just going to be the marabou tie-in. So in this instance, unlike the tail, less is more. All right, so I try to take a smaller plume if I got it. I'll wet it. And the length of it, I don't want to go past where I tied in the end of the tail. So it should be like that's a pretty good length right there in thickness. Because any more than that, it starts getting overdressed and you have too much of a bulky fly.
It's on top.
It's on top, yep. So I'll do 2 or 3 wraps, make sure it's tight. I'll twist it up again. the end, then I'm gonna cut off. And then I'll just build up a little thread head on the front of the fly. All right, so that's your head of the fly. And then at that point, once you get your marabou tied in, you built up a little bit of a thread head, then you can do a whip finish. So on the streamers, I like to do 2 or 3 whip finishes, 2 or 3 turns each. Then you just cut your thread off. And then I'll throw, if you got some type of like crazy glue or any type of super glue work, just a touch on that, those thread wraps. All right, that's the back part of the fly.
Oh, this. This is called a whip finish, and it's just like several days. It rotates around and it's like on top of the thread, under the thread, and just trying to loosen that more. You rotate, makes a figure. It's the end. Loose the end, the end.
Yeah. Oh, you tied it without the marabou? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You need what? Oh, a whip finish, okay.
A little bit close to that eye. But make this we can get it. Will he talk like big track? Yeah. Tyler, where were you fishing these in Colorado?
All over, really. Went to the Dreamstream a lot, Gunnison, anywhere along the South Platte, like Deckers and that area. I was stationed in Colorado Springs, so anything kind of just west of there.
A whip finish.
All right, so once you get the back hook tied off, you can take it out of your vise and just set it aside. All right, now you're gonna take the size 2 Daiichi streamer hook. This is the one you want to put the cone head on.
Oh, yeah. I like that. Dan Aykroyd movie.
That's what I thought.
All right, so once you get that in the vise, same thing, about halfway up the hook, start tying in the thread. I go all the way back to the bend of the hook.
You don't use as much estas on this.
You can do less. You can do a little less.
Well, I got a whole lot less right now. I think I do.
So I'll do thread wraps, put a base down just behind the bead, and that's so we can tie in the articulation wire. All right, so you can use monofilament, like 30, 40 pound monofilament. You can use beadalon, or you can use articulation wire. Most fly shops carry it. What we have here is the articulation wire. So you take about, don't use your good scissors, by the way. If you got some old scissors or a pair of pliers, I can pass these around. You want about a 4-inch piece?
Yeah.
They have about a 5-inch piece.
Yeah.
Can you tie that in, you say?
Yep. So when you tie it in, I just put it on the side closest to me. And I'll have the wire just behind the bead. And then I'll do those cross wraps forward and then cross wraps back.
Where's the bead?
No, the cone head, sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this, is that wire on top side?
So I tied it on my side, and then when I put the bead on and then tie it back onto the hook, the second piece will be on top.
Okay, so you tire side and then
Yep.
top.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. You tie it all the way up to it?
Just behind the cone head. Yeah.
Huh?
Just behind the cone head.
Go. Put any glue on?
We will after we get the rear hook attached.
So I'm wrapping the wire all the way down the back, or?
I started at the middle, wrap forward, and then just wrap back. Because once we get the bead on and the second hook, we'll wrap back and forth a couple times using those cross wraps, and then we'll secure it with some glue.
How far back did you come back with the wraps of the wire?
Just to the
bar?
barb, yeah.
Okay.
So once you do that, then you can put your bead on the hook, as so.
Bead on the wire.
The bead on the wire, sorry.
Let's check.
All right. And then you run the wire, take that second hook, run the wire bottom to top through the eye of the hook. So it should be looks like that.
Is it bottom to top?
Yep.
You want those facing you're right. They had purpose.
Yeah, just make sure the rear hook is facing the right direction.
which is like this, or no?
Yep.
Did I do just opposite?
It's soon after you.
So,
Oh, wait.
Yeah,
Oh, the wire came back through the bead then, right? Or not yet?
not yet.
Okay.
So you don't go back through the hook eye, but you do go back through the bead. All right. So it should look like that.
So you make a loop and run it back through the bead.
Yep.
There you go, so you hit it.
And then you pull it forward. So for the gap here between the eye of the rear hook and the bead, I usually do about a bead's length. So
About how much?
about a bead's width.
Yeah.
You don't want it too far back, and you don't want it so pulled tight that the rear hook can't articulate.
Okay.
The biggest, and go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead now.
All right, so the biggest trick to this too is you want the wire or that circle, this part right here in the rear, to be straight up and down. You don't want it like canted off to the side, because that's going to cause that rear hook to foul. So keep it straight up and down. You can actually take the wire between your pointer finger and your thumb, and you can kind of twist it and rotate it so it's straight up and down. Once you get the wire to where you want it in terms of being straight up and down, I'll do about 3 wraps. Make sure everything's good still. And then I'll start wrapping it forward using those cross wraps.
What do you mean by cross wraps?
So instead of just wrapping, so you got a thread here, instead of just wrapping real tight, it's almost there at like an angle. So you kind of wrap exaggerated cross wraps. So it's like this, the next one's like this, then like this. And then when you wrap it back, it's like this, this, and this. So it's like those finger traps, you know, you put it in, you can't get it out. And that's going to lock the wire in.
Yep. Thanks, Tom.
So I go just back behind the cone head, and I'll just cut it off.
You see.
Put the wire off behind the gun.
Yep.
I never have seen anybody do this.
So right now the wire is loosely secured in here. So I'll do cross wraps forward. And again, just be careful of that wire that you cut off, because if you go over that cutoff piece with your thread and you're pulling too tight, it's gonna break your thread. So I'll go gently over that 2 or 3 times, then I'll start working it back. All the way back to the barb. And then I'll wrap it forward again. Once I get it here, this is where I'll apply the super glue, and then I'll wrap it once back, once forward again, and back with the thread wraps going through the super glue. And then once that's locked in, I mean, this is probably locked in with those cross wraps good enough, but I throw super glue on just to be sure. Doesn't take a lot.
Cut off the excess wire.
Yes, right behind the cone head.
Second?
Do you have any old scissors, cut them off?
No, just use, yeah.
I got some pliers right here. Yeah. You switch phones? Or is it charger? Android? It's Android. I don't know.
You don't want to put. Yeah, rather than.
Yeah, what you think? Thank you.
Worst case, we'll turn the computer on.
All right, so once you have the wire tied in, throw some super glue on it if you got it. Just doesn't need a lot, just a little bit. You're gonna take the next hackle that you're gonna tie in. You're not gonna tie the hackle in, but you're gonna take that fuzzy part that you ripped off, or the soft, fluffy part of the hackle, and you're gonna tear that off again. But instead of throwing it away, you're actually gonna use this as a tie-in to cover this articulation in this bead. So what you don't want is two separate flies. You want one fly that's moving and articulating in the wire. So I take off the fluffy part of the hackle, line them up. Doesn't need to be a ton, but I'll start on the side away from me. Do 3 wraps like that. So now it's covering that bead. And then I'll just go on the side closest to me. And do 3 wraps. So now it's covering that bead net articulation. And obviously there's a bunch of stuff here. You just want to carefully pull it. Cut that off.
So how much of that are you talking about?
Small pinch. I mean, doesn't need to be a lot. Maybe a little more than that.
And so you tie it in right in front of the bead,
So like
right?
about this much right here.
Yeah.
And all you're gonna do is on this side, yep, just enough to cover the bead. Goes back to about just a little past the hook eye of the second hook. And then, so you tie it in away from you, and then on the near side. And you can kind of move it and twist it around if you want, just to cover up the bead.
I need to ask you a stupid question, but are you using this thing or this thing? This or
Yep.
this?
Yep.
Jim, I could have tied up about 30 squirrel worms by now. So what?
It's a squirrel. We say you could tie about 30 squirrel worms by now. You do this enough though, you'll be able to crank these out in about 10 minutes or less.
The whole flock?
Yeah. All right, so once you get that after shaft tied in, you're gonna take that same piece of copper wire, and we're essentially repeating the same steps we just completed on the rear fly, but on the front fly now. All right, so I got a little bit less copper wire, so I won't tie in as much of it on my side, but just enough so I can get a good tie-in point.
Use it.
And I'll still do the zigzag. I'll bring it forward, do 2 wraps, then bring it back. And then I'll bring my thread back to the barb. So one thing I forgot to mention is when you start tying the front hook you got this back hook that's gonna be in the way. You got some silly legs. So if anybody needs it, what I usually do is I'll just take one of these colored large straws like this size. I'll kind of measure out the length of the hook. I'll just cut it. And then I'll just run my scissors up the middle like that. I'll wrap it around the rear hook, and that keeps all the legs and everything kind of out of the way as I'm tying the front of the fly. So if anybody needs some of the straw, I got it extra up here.
Got a couple sections out the right way.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so once the wire's tied in, you have your rear hook set up how you want it. We're gonna tie in that polar chenille again, or crystal flash, the same strand of crystal flash you have. I'll pull a little bit of the crystal flash off, just exposing a little bit of the rope. And I'll tie it in just at the barb of the hook. All right, then I'll advance my thread forward. Do a half hitch just behind the cone head. Got my thread just off to the side.
What'd you say?
Said you have copper wire.
Yeah, I had the copper wire on that cover. You don't have yours? Not right.
Speed up. All right.
Y'all got a
Another piece of copper
short
wire.
piece of it
I don't know what I did with mine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, another piece of copper wire.
Mhm.
I think I-
All right, moving on.
What's your eat?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, so you're gonna take that same piece of crystal flash, hold it up, and then just like you did on that rear hook, you're just gonna wrap it forward. You want to go just behind the cone. All right, and secure with your thread.
Bring your thread, Tom.
Just behind the cone.
Got it, okay.
Put out a battery up there.
I know. That's all I got to hurry up. All right. So your thread should be behind the cone. Your crystal flash is tied in. And now you're going to take that same piece of hackle.
I don't see, I see like a deer hair popper on my
Yeah, a
screen.
little bit. I like to see a tie under pressure, Mike. All right.
So what
So
am I, can't see anything. What am I doing?
hackle,
Oh, there we go.
stem, tied it on the side facing you. 3 wraps. Take the stem, hold it back.
That's fine. Just use the watch. We're live.
All right, throw another half hitch in. All right. So your hackle should be tied in. Just gonna pull it straight up again. Move all the feathers down.
So you pointed the stem forward and then forward it back.
Yes.
You can tell I'm not quite up with it yet.
Right.
So once you get your hackle, how you want it, preen down, pinch it with your hackle pliers, and then just wrap it back.
Just hold it up. Oh, let's see. Do we bring our thread forward first?
All right.
Cut that.
So then once you get your hackle wrapped all the way back, lined up with almost to the point of the bead, you're just going to catch it again with that piece of copper wire, wrap it around 3 times. And that
Just hold it.
leftover tip of the hackle, you can just cut off.
Hold it straight up. I'm gonna run back away with it. Make a complete wrap before it starts.
Yep. So then you take up the copper wire, give it some strong tension, and then you're just going to quickly advance it forward again. Just behind the bead of the cone.
Just three.
And then I'll secure it with 2 or 3 wraps and cut that copper wire off. So this is a good example of some of the hackles being trapped. So you can take a bodkin, you can kind of just pick them out. Carefully though, just make sure you don't hook the wire. Pull that out.
Now, I got it right behind.
All right. All right, there's only 3 steps left, so we're almost there. So this time you're going to grab 3 of the silly legs. You have 3 left.
Hey, Doug, you enjoyed it. You just get the ends out right about it.
All right, so just like you tied the back silly legs in, you can do the same in the forward. Start on the side opposite you. Do 2 wraps. Grab the legs, pull them back towards you. Do 3 more wraps. All right.
Just hold it down.
All right, once the silly legs are tied in, I like to have them a little bit longer than the silly legs in the rear, but I'll just trim off just to the length that I want. So about there is good. All right. So pick out a good piece of marabou again. Again, doesn't have to be super large or bulky. I want the length to go back to just about the bead or the point of the articulation, and that's where I'll good length right there. And again, you don't want it too much. That's probably a good amount. I'll do 3 wraps to secure it. Twist it and cut it off just behind the cone.
So you put some marabou in there just now?
Yep, just on the top. So after you do the silly legs, then you just tie some marabou on top. And then so the last piece is,
And how far does that marabou go out?
I just go back to the bead, just about the bead.
Oh, to the bead? Okay.
Yep. So if you don't have dubbing, I got some up here. This is Arizona Diamond Dub. This is, you don't need a lot of it. We're just gonna do direct dubbing onto the thread, and we're just gonna do about 2 wraps around the eye or behind the cone, just to finish off the collar. So, I mean, if you got your own dubbing that you want to use, or your personal preference, go ahead. If not, I got a little bit. You don't need a lot, just a little pinch.
I didn't disseminate,
Yeah, you can use this too, the polar Estes, and just do probably just 1 wrap. Just get in there tight. But,
yeah, they'll have to do that.
yeah.
I think we got power. It was actually an adapter here.
So for the dubbing, I'll just throw a little bit of wax on the thread, just help it stick.
What are we using for dubbing?
So this is Arizona Diamond Dub, or the Estes that you have. You can just tie it in and just do 1 wrap of the Estes.
This, oh, okay, I was thinking you, use regular dubbing, frame thread.
Yeah, that's what I did on this one. You can just take a little bit of dubbing with some wax, direct dubbing, or you can use that. It's fine. All right, so to finish off this fly, you don't, especially with the cones, you don't want to just whip finish. So what I like to do is I'll take a little bit of the super glue and I'll run it on my thread, just about like 3 inches. And I'll wrap it just behind the cone. That's gonna lock it in. You can probably cut that and it'll be fine. But then I'll just do 1 whip finish just behind the cone. Cut it off, and that is the fly.
Hey,
Just in the tail. I don't put anywhere else. Yeah, it's supposed to be like a slender profile fly. When it gets wet, it kind of like, it's made to be, you can jig it. So you lift up your rod and it kind of goes down the marabou, like breathes with the fly. It's not too big, so like even Colorado and stuff, the trout. Yeah, it's really light. So I don't do any like lead wraps behind the cone. Don't use tungsten. Catch.
Where do you use this for bass mostly?
I've used it in ponds and done well, just kind of like casting across on the bank. I used it on the Sabine spillway. Like big water,
We never,
like you're not, I mean,
we never
yeah,
did,
like
we
right-
never did wrap our copper wire on it. Did we skip that?
no, he did it.
He did it.
He did.
Oh,
You skipped it. But yeah, so like this is for around here, like bigger water for sure. I mean, I'm sure it'd work on the chain pickerel. I would throw this down for redfish and sea trout, like probably not in this color, but maybe like this one. But
We did, move that thread right there. Great. So where do we trim the legs?
I mean, this was built, designed to be a trout fly, but you can use this for any fish that eats another fish or bait fish. Or you can tie this in like orange and it can be almost like a craw pattern.
All right, y'all, we lost the camera feed from the fly, but he just finished. So, Jeff, you look relaxed. You're done. Peter?
All right, thank you.
Nice. Flip, let's see what you got there. Yeah.
Thank you. Great class, really.
Peanut envy.
Peanut envy? Peanut envy. Kind of play on words.
Yeah. They look good. Flip's got a good one. Jeff's got a good one. Peter's got a good one. Y'all, we got Flip Saragusa from Lafayette, Jeff Ferguson, Lake Charles, and Peter Zadig from Long Island. Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Hey, Yank.
And he is, we are eternally jealous of the pictures he posts on Facebook from getting out and catching all those fish up there, so. All right. Yeah, well, upstate, I think, so. All right, y'all, we've lost cameras, so I think that's about it. Tyler, thanks, man. That's really a
Wow.
really good fly. Good lesson through it. Excellent.
Fantastic class, really.
Thank y'all, and it will be on our YouTube channel probably about tomorrow or tonight. Something, I mean, it's automatically recording, so it should be up there. If you want to find another one, you've got Tyler up there to reference it. All right, y'all. It's almost 8, so we are going to sign off. Good to see everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Flip, I hope to see you Thursday if all goes well. So
Yeah, good. I hope to see you too, Bill.
yeah, nice. Okay.